Hello and welcome to Auto Repair Shop Truths. My name is Kurt Bennett and I'm going to be using my 26 years of automotive repair shop experience to guide you from start to finish, from picking the right repair shop and dealing with whatever they throw at you, and how to save you money, and so much more. Be it at a dealership or an aftermarket repair shop, I'm going to expose the behind-the-scenes workings and provide insights you won't find anywhere else, giving you the upper hand the next time that your check engine light comes on. You'll know how to pick the right shop, what to expect when you arrive at the front counter, how to handle the call that comes from the shop later on, and guidance on what to fix and so much more. Nothing fancy here, folks, just auto shop repair truths. So let's get started on today's episode. That's right, it's understanding parts and labor. That's today's focus. We're going to get behind the mystery and the magic of where those numbers come from. So we're going to talk about labor rates. We're going to talk about times, how those times are basically, do they pull them out of thin air? And we're going to talk about parts pricing, how much they're marked up. This you don't know, and you should know. So just those things we're going to cover, plus some other little examples and things like that. I think you're going to walk away from here much more educated on the process. And hey, education's power. So we'll start with labor time. How is labor time determined? I mean, do they just kind of, eeny, meeny, miny, moe it? Back in the day, there was a company, and they may still be around. I haven't seen them too much lately, but it was called Chilton's. And Chilton's was a labor time guide. It was literally a big book or several books that a technician, say at a dealership, would walk back, hunt the job, look in that book, and that book told him what was a fair price to charge a customer to replace a part. Now, over the years, as time has gone on, there's different labor time guides and things like that. Now, labor time guide isn't just there to tell you how much labor time you should charge someone to replace a part. It's there also to guide the technician. If the technician has replaced alternators before, but he's never done one on, say, a Dodge truck, well, he opens the hood, he looks at it, he wants to get a better idea of what's all going to be removed and things like that. Well, these time guides will have like a step-by-step repair process to kind of guide him. Now, over time, technicians will, if they've done a job several times, I mean, they can, an alternator on that. Oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go over my toolbox. I'm going to walk over there with a ratchet, a 10mm socket, some pliers. He already knows a lot of the tool. He's done it so many times. But that doesn't basically affect what the labor time is, and we'll get into that in a minute of those specifics. But so they use labor time guides. Most common ones are All Data, and then there's one called Mitchell. And they're basically a book that, or in this case, a reference online that technicians or the service advisors will go in and look up that particular repair and get some idea of what they're supposed to charge for that job. For instance, we're going to use a 2016 Honda Civic, and we're going to be talking about an alternator throughout. This will come to fruition whenever I start showing you about getting quotes online and stuff like that here in a minute. But so suffice it to say, like, let's say this alternator is out on this 2016 Honda Civic. Well, I need some guidance, especially if I'm an independent shop. I'll have seen everything under the sun out there. So I probably won't have retained how much it takes to replace this alternator. So when I go look up the year, make, and model, most of the time by VIN, it's going to show me R&R, which is remove and replace, alternator assembly. And so it'll give me a time guide. It'll give me a time amount. And let's say it's 1.5 hours. We're just pulling that number out. I don't know if it's that or not. But 1.5 hours. Now, where did they get this number from? Did All Data or Mitchell just decide that's what it was going to be? Well, a long time ago, it was told to me that basically what happens is a group of people get together and they actually do the repair on a car, and they log what your make and model is, the size engine, and all kinds of stuff. And with hand tools, they go in and replace that part. Now, of course, today technicians have air, pneumatic tools, electrics, impact guns and things like that. So, but the people that created these time guides needed to know how long it would take someone that might not have those tools available to them, because you'll have basically a broad range from what technicians have in a shop. Some greener technicians may not have $50,000 worth of tools in their $40,000 toolbox. They might just have a simple set of sockets and ratchets and things like that. So they needed to make sure that they could come up with a labor time that could match everyone's ability to do repair in the shop. Of course, that comes down to people that don't have air pneumatic tools. So in this example of the alternator, they would start from start to finish, and they would time the guy in replacing the part. In any kind of, like, let's say for instance, your Civic, you bought a certain model that has a certain feature on it that not all Civics have. Well, in that labor time guide, it would actually show R&R alternator and give 1.5 hours. Then below that, it would say, if equipped with X, add 0.2 hours, because that would mean more labor would be incurred to take off that extra part or that extra item that you had it specifically on your car because of the features you bought, to move it out of the way to then put the alternator on and off. Pretty good guide, but they are not perfect, and sometimes they don't agree. The all data time guide may pay more or less, or say pay more, they'll quote more or less on time than say Mitchell's does. Oddly enough, a lot of technicians have these time guides on their computer at their workstation. And of course, wouldn't you know, they'll look up both. They'll actually go into both and look up that alternator job and see which one pays the most. And that's, of course, the labor time they're going to want to do the job. Now, for instance, I can tell you from just having done this for so long, there's times when that labor guide is grossly wrong. And there's times where it's actually correct, but the technician has, over the years, have come to determine that, yes, on this particular job, normally it would require partial engine removal or lowering of the subframe. These are both massive labor time jobs to do, but they found a way to go in there and do it for significantly less time. Now, as a service advisor and as shop owners and managers, a lot of the time, the dealership almost always will stick to that time. They rarely come down from that. They can, but they don't like to. Now, in independent shops, though, we have obviously the levity to go ahead and, if something says it takes that long, but it doesn't actually take that long, we're going to bring the labor down. I think there was a job, sometimes it's steering racks, other times it's control arms and things like that would normally call for 10, 15 hours of labor, okay, at whatever the shop's labor rate is. And the tech knows all along, I can do that job I can get that job done in 5 hours. And so we'll bring the labor time down to match what it real world represents. And they'll do that. And they're fair, and stuff like that. But in other times, like case in point, there was a time where the all data labor guide said that to take off an ignition coil off of a car that I had a lot of actual physical hands-on experience with, I knew that coil was like a 20-minute job. I mean, it was calling for 3.4 hours. And I talked to the tech, and of course, wouldn't you know, he wrote down 3.4 hours that he wanted to do that job. And I had to tell him, I said, look, man, I can't in good faith pay you this much time to do this job. I've done this job multiple times. I can guarantee you it only takes 20, 25 minutes to do it. But yeah, so there are times when it's wrong. You have to have a service advisor with integrity, matched hopefully with a technician that has integrity. But if you have the service advisor that does have it and the shop and the tech that doesn't, there's a battle behind the scenes that goes on that you're not aware of, and I'm looking to win that battle. Because on the one hand, yeah, should I quote it for 15 hours, whatever you're talking about doing? I might lose the job. They might go to a dealer or somewhere else. They might even go to a different shop that is doing exactly what I'm going to describe here, and that's lower it down to a reasonable, real world labor time to pull that part out. So again, the labor time guides are just that. It's a guide. Now, what I've seen shops do, either by using the shop software to do it automatically, or the service advisor will do it, but sometimes they'll mark it up a small percentage, no matter what the labor time guide is, because all this is done electronically. I mean, I can go on the client for the labor time guide, download that job directly onto your ticket, and it'll say 1.5. But you can program, and this is generally done by the owners, because it's just in their hands to do this. They have the ability to, it'll be password protected, so they can do what they want. But they may go in there and bump it up as much as 3%. So instead of 1.5, it may be 1.68 or something like that. The reason for that they justify doing that is, in their minds, the labor time guide is always on the weaker side, which would favor the customer. And understand that labor time guides, what they're designed to do is to be fair to the customer and fair to the tech. In other words, they don't have any bias either way. However, shop owners sometimes, in an attempt to be greedy, and even some service advisors, will bump up that labor a few tenths, a couple to a few tenths. And it almost gets intrinsic in the way that you deal day to day, because when you don't do that, the tech will come in and say, hey, I looked this up on AllData, it's 1.5. Where's my bump? So you'll run into some stuff like that, and you do your best to offset it. And the tech, sometimes you'll just cave in and let him have it. Other times not. In the greater scheme of things, as long as the labor rate's not super sky high, you're not even going to feel it for the most part on your ticket. Which begs the next question. Yes, now you've got the labor time, you've thrown on the ticket. How do they come to the actual labor cost? Well, that's basically what the hourly rate is. What is the hourly rate of that shop? Now, this amount can skew quite widely, because the labor rate that you would use to change that alternator will not and should not be the same labor rate you do to perform an oil change. Because what is an oil change? Dropping an underpan, unscrewing a filter, undoing the oil pan drain plug, putting the oil back in. So you can't charge $135 an hour for a oil change that you're getting 0.1 to do. So they'll almost have, on things like oil changes, alignments, things they'll work on menu price on that. So I don't know if you've been to places where sometimes they'll say, well, a base oil change up to 5 quarts with standard filter is X amount. Add X for synthetic up to 5 quarts, things like that. Alignments, kind of same scenario. Usually domestic makes, Asian makes, it'll be one price, but then because of the higher tech and the way the suspensions are on European vehicles, the alignment cost will be a little bit more, because there's more arms and there's more parts and there's more bolts and nuts and things to take loose and tighten when they're trying to get the alignment perfect on those things. But most times than not, an oil change, tire rotation, things like that are going to be a menu price. Okay, so the labor rate doesn't come into play there. So they can set up in something in their software to where if it's below a certain amount of labor, they'll scale it to this rate. If it's another set between another bracket, they can scale it. But by and large, there's going to be different rates for different things. Diagnostics is typically a menu price. So you'll almost always have like a base diagnostic. Hey, I've got a Christmas tree in my dash. All right, well, $150 diagnostic start. Hey, my car got struck by lightning. Oh, well, you probably fried a lot of stuff in there. We're going to need to start with like a level 1 or level 2 electrical diagnostic. And so those are going to be menu prices, but on some of that, like for instance, let's say the labor rate's $150 to do a diagnostic, a check engine light diagnostic, but yet the car got struck by lightning. So you would start actually there probably along the lines of a $250, $350, sometimes as high as $500. Again, it's going to greatly depend on what shop you go to, dealer, aftermarket, an independent shop, things like that. So when it comes to that type stuff, you just got to kind of be wary that there's no real set labor rate on menu stuff like that. And any changes you should be made aware of, and you should make that clear. Like, hey, look, I'm basically telling you, yes, I want my check engine light diagnostic done. But before you go any further than that, if you feel like you need more diagnostic, you contact me first. Explain to me what I got for this part of the diagnostic. What did I pay $150 for? And why is it now being moved up to this? They should be able to articulate, hey, we exhausted this, we're on the right track, but the technician has exhausted the time we've allocated on this menu price labor. We're going to need additional diagnostic. Now that's typically only going to happen on like the electrical problems. Hey, when I turn my radio on, my horn starts beeping, my taillight starts flashing. That's a weird thing that's going to take some time to figure out, honestly. But on like check engine lights, they're going to pull the codes, they're going to run through the diagnostic fault tree, they're going to scope certain sensors, so there's a lot involved in that diagnostic. It's not what AutoZone and O'Reilly's does. They don't hook up a scan tool, puke out a code, and then a very generic paragraph on what the problem could be. And we'll go more into that on another episode where we talk about those things, because I need you guys to understand that you can't really get much from those free scans. It's going to help you understand and make your shop visit a lot more smoother and a lot more understandable. That they're just not pulling this amount out of the air and they just want to charge you when you could get it done at AutoZone and O'Reilly's for free. So some shops, as cars get older, some shops really only want to work on newer stuff. So they'll actually have a kind of like a limit on the year models that they're willing to service. And if they don't outright deny servicing those models, they might have, like, I wouldn't call it punitive, but it seems the older the car gets, the less technicians that were alive at that time while those cars were out there and in mass numbers are available to actually figure out what's wrong with them. Take, for instance, prior 1995 and prior, they ran on a system called OBD1, which is Onboard Diagnostics version 1. 96 and further, and those years will change a little bit depending on the make of car, but 96 and future cars had OBD2, which was the second version of that. And OBD1 cars, I don't know if you've owned any or have had a chance to maybe be acclimated to how those things would tell you what codes were in the computer, but the check engine light would actually, some would have apparatus that you just plug in, it would make the short for you, but other one you take a little paper clip and make it happen. But suffice it to say, the way you got the codes out of that was that you would stick that in the diagnostic port and the check engine light would flash a number code. So 1, 2, 3, pause, with 4 after that was a code 34, and you'd pursue it past that point. Misfires and things like that on those kinds of cars, primarily it's a guessing game on a lot of them. Today's cars, OBD2, they'll actually, some cars had cylinder specific misfires where you could go in and see which cylinder was the actual cylinder that was messing up. You could focus your search and hunt on that particular cylinder. So the older the car, you would think it'd be easier because the technology just wasn't in those older cars to really make a difference for someone to have struggle with finding out, but it's actually not the case. It's a little bit more difficult. And again, those old techs, those long in the tooth techs that could figure that type stuff out, few and far in between. So as far as labor rates go, if they're going to work on a 20-year-old car, there may be a change in labor rate. It may go from $150 to $250 an hour. Now, immediately you kind of go, wow, that's expensive. Well, 25 and older, I mean, you're getting into your carbureted engines and throttle body injection instead of multi-point or direct injection, all the cars have today, they get super, super difficult. I've been to a couple shops where a couple of the techs, and they were older techs, that were comfortable with working on carbureted, throttle body injection, things like that, because they're more difficult to figure out. Because you can't just plug in a scan tool. You can't just do this simplistic, I say it's simplistic, you got to go to school for it, you got to know what you're doing, but you got this big $40,000, literally $40,000 scan tool that has all these abilities in it, and if you can't communicate with that car and find out what's going on with it and watch data streams and things like that, it's more difficult. And it's very difficult for a guy, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, that's never been exposed to that kind of stuff. So there'll be a labor increase. But you can imagine it's tough to call a customer that has like an 89 Buick Regal, or if they even had them at that point, and tell them, hey, you need an alternator. And the labor's $700. Because the labor rate is $350 times whatever the labor time guide says you can charge. So you won't have too many of those simply because customers typically aren't going to pay for that. They'll say, no thanks, I'll come pick it up, or but that's a discussion that needs to happen on the front counter. Say, hey, I hate to tell you, man, I know you love your car. Who knows? Maybe it was Gramps' car. You miss him. He's gone, and you keep it for that reason. But if we're going to work on this thing, understand that the labor rate is significantly high. Okay, parts should still come in. Matter of fact, parts will be a little bit cheaper because it's an older vehicle. Plentiful, inventory out there for it. But yeah, kind of understand that. That can sway that much if it's an older car. We talked about electrical diagnostic rate. Vehicles today, they have multiple computers on them. I've talked about that in other videos. There's a controlled area network system on these cars. It's called CAN for short. Now, if you look at a diagram of this CAN system, it'll have all the computer modules that car has. And sometimes it can be 15, 20, it just depends. And these are all computers. They're basically little modules or computers. And simplistically on the diagram, you may have them in line. It'll have two wires going from this module to that module to that module and that module. or a horseshoe, depending on if you can take up one page or not. The difficulty in that is, yes, looking on a piece of paper, it looks like all you do is go from module to module and seeing where the signal falls out, replacing that module, and then testing further. But one module might be located under the seat. Another one, once he finds that that one tests good, he has to go to the next module. Well, guess where the next module's at? It's in your dash. And once he tests that, the next module is in your center console. So the seat has to come out, some of the dash has to be pulled apart, the center console has to come up to get access to all these things. So you can't do all that for $150. If you're having a significant issue like that, that's where the level 1 electrical diagnostic, level 2, some shops will actually charge you per hour as they're working on that vehicle. That is a tactic I'm seeing happening now. And so they may charge you the regular labor rate, but they're going to charge you clock hours instead of just like a generality. So that example I gave you, level 1, let's say that they're saying that their level 1 to start looking at a problem like a serious electrical issue is $250. So generally what they're going to do with that, the technician's fair with his time. He's got a block of labor that he can apply to checking and hunting down your problem. So let's say that he gets to the end of what he feels is fair of having consumed that block of time, but he's on track to find what's going on. You know, he knows where he's got to go next. He's not just flying blind here. He has an idea, but in order to proceed, he needs level 2 approved. And so that's a job for me to call, to educate you, to say, hey, here's where we're at. Do you want to do it or not? Most of the time, shops are going to have you pay one or the other charge. In other words, they're only asking for another $100 if it goes to the next level and so forth. But again, like I said, some shops are charging hourly, and that will get hairy. And then finally on the rates, the labor rate to do the diagnostics, the various diagnostics, the labor rate for 20 or 25-year-old cars. Usually, if your car is not so old, it's a run-of-the-mill repair, it's an alternator or something like that, then they will have basically a labor rate. Now, when you call these shops and you're trying to be super smart, and I get it, I know why you're doing it, you call and ask, hey, what is your labor rate there? Well, it greatly depends, because again, you can put into the system on the shop software that when you pull a labor time from the labor guide and throw it onto your invoice, that matrix takes that and says, okay, if it's within this grid, it gets this rate. Go up above, if it's more time, it gets this grid. So it would be hard a lot of the times for a technician, for a service advisor to tell you straight up what the actual labor rate is. Now, some of them have an actual labor rate for R&R of parts and things like that. But again, if I tell you that, and then it's a job that moves it to a different bracket and the matrix of that system does a certain change to it, then if you sit there and say, well, wait a minute, how many labor hours did you charge me? And okay, when I do the math on that, it says it's this, and yet you charge me this. Well, you should. It's a weird game to play in going in there and trying to pin someone down on a labor rate. Shops don't like to tell you their labor rate. Sometimes the invoice you get the invoice that you get at the end of the day will show you the labor time on there, but it's not going to show you the actual rate. It'll show you the labor time, maybe, but it'll definitely show you the amount it took to do that job. That's what you're going to pay to do it. That can vary too, on a sliding scale, more or less. Now, begs the question, can a service advisor or a shop owner go in on your ticket, and for that alternator repair, let's say it only charges or it downloaded 1.5 hours. Can I go in and change it to 2? Yes, you can. You can. When might you do that? It could be that, again, the labor time guides, they're just a guide. You know from experience that it's been off on this alternator repair. And so you know, if you're just going to try to stick to what the book says, you're going to screw the technician. He's not going to get paid fair labor to do that job. So you'll go in there and automatically change it. So you can do that. Now here's an issue where a lot of folks kind of get unnecessarily upset with. And it can actually keep you from getting your car back quicker than later. So let's say that I'm dumb and I'm going to share with you what the book time says that it takes that alternator to get done. And let's say I say, hey, Ms. Jones, you need an alternator. It's going to take, the book time calls for like 1.5 hours of labor, and then they approve the repair. It's going to cost $500, whatever. And they say, go ahead and do it. And they've decided, since it's 1.5 hours of labor, yeah, I can read a book, I can get some work done here in the waiting room. And so they stay. The part gets there quick, as you can often get on most alternators. The part's usually in stock at one of your local suppliers. You get it there quick. You got Billy. Billy is a 20-year veteran in this field. So Billy grabs that alternator and he puts it on in 45 minutes. Can happen. In an interest to get you out of there quick so you can get on with your day, I go ahead and come over and say, hey, good news, Miss Jones. Car's ready to go. That was quick. Wait, you told me it was 1.5 hours or hour and a half. Are you going to discount the ticket? Because it only took him 45 minutes. The short and quick answer to that is no. And here's why. Reverse this scenario back to the point where Miss Jones said, go ahead and do it. Well, the only tech I had at that time to do the job was Bo Cephas. And Bo Cephas, he's good. I wouldn't keep him in the shop if he wasn't. He does quality work. But the guy is a tortuga. That's Spanish for turtle. He doesn't do anything quick. And it's not because he's slow or he's lowbrow or anything like that. He just doesn't move fast. He takes his time. He feels like that's the best. He can give the customers his best if he takes his time doing the job. And let's say it takes him 2 hours clock time to do that work. Well, it would be super unfair if I came up to Miss Jones at the end of that and said, Miss Jones, car's ready. Wow, it took longer than an hour and a half. I know, right? Well, that's why I have to adjust the labor. I have to charge you more because it took him another half hour to do it. That ain't gonna fly too right with you. What the industry doesn't do is it doesn't punish the technician who might be able to get a job done faster than what the book says, but it also then doesn't punish the customer to get a job done longer than what the book says. So I hope that makes sense. I think in those instances, I've seen actual times where a technician will come up and say, hey, I'm done with that alternator job. Got it done quick. You want me to just hold off on turning it in? And it will come down to if the service advisor knows the customer, if they have a good rapport with them, if they have had instances in the past where you could tell that this customer really just wants, the price is the price. It is what it is. You know, how quickly can you get me done? There's other times you might have a new customer where you're kind of gun shy. You don't know how this is going to go down. So you tell the tech, yeah, hang tight, you know, bring it up in just a little bit. Because if he backs it out of his bay and goes parks it in the parking lot, guess what Miss Jones may have the propensity to do? I'm gonna walk around outside. What is my car doing sitting over there? Is it ready? Well, that was fast. And you go into the whole, I'm not paying that much. It didn't take you that long. You know, those are the things that customers have kind of forced the industry to respond in a way where, yeah, you know, you could have been out of here 30 minutes ago. But we were fearful that, you know, if we gave it back to you that quick, you're going to start demanding your money back. And that's one of those things where I've seen it. I've seen techs do wondrous things. Now, I fancy myself somewhat of a mechanic to a degree. I'm not a good diagnostics guy. But I've done my own work on cars, my hot rods, my kids' cars, my wife's cars. You know, it takes me all day to do something that these guys can do in 2 hours. We're not going to punish these guys for being good at what they do. I don't think that's a good concept, and no one would agree with that. But of course, to sit and try to explain to a customer at that moment who just realized their car got done in a fraction of the time they were told, they demand justice. And that's a fight and explosions and fireworks on the front counter that you just don't want to have. So your car might have been done a long time ago. So I would recommend that, having had this conversation with you, that if you value getting in and out quicker, then you could tell the service provider, you could literally, hey, if this thing gets done a lot earlier than what you thought it would, I'm not one of those. Let me know, because I got places to be. So that's going to help you. And so that's why I share these things with you, because like I said, this series is designed, this page, this YouTube channel, it's designed to kind of get into the inner workings of things that can make things better for you. And a lot of what I'm trying to do is help you understand the operation that's happening. Because in the end, you got better things to do. You come in, you got a problem, that's an anxious moment. I just want to get my car fixed for as little as possible and then get out of here. I mean, I've got life. Now, let's say that Tortuga took 3 hours to do your 1.5 hour alternator, Tortuga is not going to be around for much longer, because in a shop, the environment, it's a numbers thing. And I'm sure you're not shocked at that, because wherever you work at, it's a numbers game as well. They're always looking at the bottom line, the numbers, and there's something called bay efficiency. So they take the number of bays and they figure we got this many techs, we should be able to get this much labor out per day. So if you've got a guy in there where bay efficiency would suggest that that bay right there should be able to turn 7 hours a day at least, and he's spending half the day on one repair, he's only pulling in 4 hours, or he's only pulling in 1.5 hours, he's taking 4 hours to do it, his bay efficiency is in the tank. And that boy ain't gonna be employed for long, or they're gonna bump him down to oil change or whatever. So that's another reason why it won't take that long. I mean, yes, there'll be green technicians. You'll have basically a kaleidoscope of different levels of techs throughout your shop at any given time. But the goal is to make sure that he's competent enough to try to do what they say it's called beating the clock. Okay, so if the alternator calls for 1.5 hours, he should be able to beat that. That's the goal. Now we're going to shift gears here and start talking about parts. That's probably one of the biggest issues that I have found that customers tend to want to bring up. 100% get it. 100%. But we always must keep in mind, a business is a business, right? And so a business is there to not only be a business, but stay in business. And how do you stay in business? You have to make a profit. Now, most repair shops, whether it be the dealer or independent, it's not car sales that basically maintain a dealership. It's going to be the repair. It's going to be the service department. And that's what maintains a dealership. And so car sales helps, but when you're looking for something to sustain a dealership during times of low car sales, it's going to be the service department and doing repairs. So what's been big in the industry lately is people will get online, they'll go to Amazon, they'll go just a Google search, and they'll look up an alternator for their 2016 Honda Civic. Now I can't tell you the number of times people called in and said, hey, you told me earlier that, and I asked you what the parts and labor was, and yeah, I broke it down for you and stuff like that. And then I'll say, when you told me how much the part was, I did a quick search. A friend of mine at work said that sounded a bit high. And so I got online and I did a quick search, and I found that alternator on there for $300 less than what you're trying to screw me. The funny thing here is, if you give me 20 minutes, I can call you back with an even cheaper price than if I search on the internet for it. But I don't look at the internet for my parts. I don't do that, because everyone knows about Amazon. Everybody knows that a majority of that stuff is sourced from China. I hate to say it, much love to my China friends. I'm actually trying to learn Chinese right now because I think it's a pretty language, and Chinese parts by and large are junk. And they even do counterfeit parts. I remember seeing an oil filter for a Toyota. The box, the filter looked 100% with just a very little bit. You wouldn't be able to tell it unless you knew that this was a deal, that you knew it was an issue, and someone had told you where to go to look to see if it was a counterfeit part. Now, in my mind, an oil filter that is directly responsible for sending oil throughout my engine, that's kind of a part I don't want to skimp on, at least with it being a legitimate part. Now, there is house brand oil filters, house brand air filters, they pay like $3, $5, $6, $7 for them and charge you $22 or whatever, but it's still a viable, real part. And so so we're not going to go online and try to find these parts. We have dedicated vendors, and these vendors only work primarily with independent repair shops. So a lot of what they have, they'll have parts. Now, what we do is we default to, say it's a GM vehicle, we'll look for AC Delco parts in the aftermarket. That's going to be our first look. If you have a Ford, we do FOMOCO, Ford Motor Company. We're looking for parts in the aftermarket, Motorcraft parts that were for Ford. For Dodge, it would be Mopar. Okay, so you're always gravitating toward those names first. Now, surprise, the dealers haven't always made wonderful parts. Case in point, there's on a lot of the V6 Cherokees, Wranglers out there, they have a common issue with the engine oil cooler leaking. Now this thing's buried up under the intake manifold. It's hard to see if it's leaking at all because it's just buried deep in there. And for a long time, the goal, when something's leaking like that, when you have a cover gasket or you have an oil pan, you're just going to replace the gasket or the seal. But there's been such a large influx of plastic parts nowadays that this plastic, after so many heat cyclings, right? I mean, you drive your car 220 degrees underneath the hood, swell, you let it cool overnight, contracts. You drive it again, swell, contract, swell, contract. So over time, this plastic warps. So you no longer have a totally flat surface to try to get a gasket to seal to another totally flat surface. I struggled with this myself, got a bad review off of it, as a matter of fact. And that was the one time that I was so frustrated that they kept coming back with a continuous oil leak that I myself went out there and tried to say, well, maybe the tech's just not trying hard enough. Let me see what I can find out here. And it ended up being an engine oil cooler. Now these things basically have a plastic neck, and they have a metal cooler portion with a lot of heat sinks on it, plates. But then the bottom portion of it is plastic. That's what happens, is the plastic bottom is mated to a metal engine component, and it'll warp. So initially you think you're gonna dig this thing out of there. It's not cheap to do. You're gonna dig it out, and who better to put the part back in there with is be a Mopar part, right? They made the thing. So I fell victim to that the first couple of times because I ordered the seals initially because usually it's just a gasket or a seal that's leaking. So we put that back on, she came back, it's leaking. Took it back off, said, what's going on? Replaced the seals a second time. Now the third time I went ahead and said, you know what? Let's just replace the actual cooler itself. A few months later, she comes back, irate. Man, it was a nightmare. So when I say that the dealer parts aren't the best parts for a repair, I know for a fact they're not. In that particular example, there's a company that makes, it's in the aftermarket, it's a company called Dorman, and they make an engine oil cooler for that very car. And what they've done is, it's all metal. It's an all metal component. Now that's what, in this case, Dodge should have done in the first place, or in the second place. They should have redesigned the part in a metal component and made that the new part that's available for a Mopar vehicle. Yeah, but they haven't. At the time of this recording, they haven't. So Dorman stepped up, made that, problem solved. The dealer parts aren't always the best parts to go back on a car. And so in the aftermarket, being a service advisor with a lot of years experience, you've seen the good parts, I may buy an oil cooler from Dorman, but I may not buy a window regulator or something like that because I'll know the return rate and the failure rate for that regulator is not good. But you being the customer, all you're interested in is what? Ka-ching! The dollar sign. So when you see something online that is a fraction of the part price that I quoted, naturally you're going to want something as close to that as you can because you're going to feel like you're getting screwed. I get it 100%. Now I don't set the parts price matrix, and similarly to the labor rate, we can go in and change parts matrix. You can change it physically. The owners don't like you doing that because they have a certain profit margin that they're looking to get off parts, and you go in there screwing with their profit margin, they're going to have a problem with that. They leave it open to you, and many of them do, because there's times when you have to adjust it because there's been something that you need to compensate in parts that you don't have in labor, and you just need to have that freedom to be able to do that. Most independent shops allow you that. But I'm going to tell you the typical price markup that I've seen on most decent parts, aftermarket, ACDOCO, Nippa Denso, NGK, KYB struts, all these parts, 65%. 60 to 65% markup. And that's not the real markup, actually. That they have a funny little matrixing in there that's kind of high. It's almost like that plus another 0.5 percentage. So if I put a part in for $65, and if you were to take out a calculator and say 65 times 65% and find that number's less than what the actual calculated number is in that software system. So there is that difference. Now, when can you not charge that type of profit margin on a part? It's when it's a large cost part. Now that would go for an engine, right? It would go for a catalytic converter. Some of the aftermarket ones are pretty expensive, so you can't always hope to get 65% profit margin off of that. Dealer parts. Now, I've seen some shops that will still charge the same profit margin that they do on independent or aftermarket parts, that they do on dealer parts. That's kind of abhorrent, but they legitimize it by saying, well, this is because we offer a long warranty, or look at this, it's about the service, not the price, and things like that. And if they don't do that, then they're not our customer. And, it's kind of like, I never have agreed with that. I don't own the company. So there's only so much I could do. On large, computers, like say the PCMs or the ECUs, you got to be careful with those, how you mark them up. Because almost always you guys as customers, and rightly so, you might even call the dealer to see how much a dealer part is. Well, if I make the statement to you that, dealer's only one that had it. Yeah, it'll take 3 to 5 days to get it, special order. And then I tell you the part price, and then you being a educated person calls the dealer, and the dealer tells you over the phone a different price, and usually a much lower price. That's going to be an issue. Because yes, in the aftermarket, I'm able to use different vendors, and these different vendors may have the same alternator for that Honda Civic. It'll be obviously priced different because maybe you've got more history of sales with this company, so they give you a deeper discount on parts. And the only reason I would not get the part from them is because they're showing me that if I order it from them now, I won't see it till 4 p.m. I told you I could get your car back to you by the end of the day. So I might have to go to this vendor over here that's $15 higher in order to get that part here on time to get you out the door like I promised. So there's a lot of moving parts in a situation like that, but will we allow you to get your part brought in and stuff like that? Typically no, but I told you I was going to tell you some behind the scenes stuff. Will we then, once we can't find it in the aftermarket and we will not let you get it from the internet and bring it to us, will we then go to the internet and get it? Yep. We'll go to Amazon. We'll go to, we might have to get a salvage yard part even. Particularly in the case of anti-lock braking systems, modules, those things, the dealerships, which is primarily the only place you're going to get them from because of the liability, the safety liability of aftermarkets making something for a brake system that if it fails, wow, lawsuits. We sometimes have to go to the salvage yard as well. Now, does that mean they bring the price super way down? No, because you're still what? You're still going to be warranting it for your 3-year, 36, whatever it is. So they won't charge you list price. They won't charge you the full price. They will bring it down a little bit. But when I tell you they can get a module for $120 and charge you $700 for it, they will do it. They will do it. It's a sad thing. And like I said, as a employee, any employee, a service advisor, they're limited on what they can dictate as to how you're going to be charged at the end of the day. It's just what the business model is. Now that's no different from this shop to that shop. This shop's got great reviews, this shop doesn't. It doesn't matter, it's the same across the board. But again, will some shops maybe only mark up the part 50%? Yes, that's possible. By and large, they all have the same kind of, I've seen that kind of be the same profit margin for parts across the board. Now, gaskets, seals, things that cost me $2.20, I'm gonna mark that up 70%. Ends up being $4 or whatever for a gasket seal. I'm making $2 off the part. So you're gonna have some changes like that. I talked about dealer markup on prices. That's generally going to be 40%, 42%, 45%. You start getting a little greedy when you go up that high. Again, it can be set with matrix. The owner has the right to do that, and they typically will. But again, you can go in and play with it in case let's say I forgot to charge you, I needed it, I forgot to put it on the ticket. I can't necessarily charge you for it because I didn't tell you I was going to charge you for it. So in order to put that part on the ticket so I can have some tracking that I did actually install that part for you, I may put that part on there, charge you the price for the part, but then I'll go in and take some of the part price off to bring the estimate back down closer to where I told you it would be. When it comes to bringing your own parts, there are several reasons why no will most often be the answer. And here's why. Very few shops today allow this. And even though they may, it's a weird animal. I mean, to this day, I still struggle with it because I still get exposed to it on the few times that we would allow something like this to happen. So scenario is you come in, your 2016 Honda Civic, you ask me, can I bring my own alternator? This shop, for some strange reason, allows that. So you bring it in and I tell you, and I look at the part, I can tell right away, this is off of Johnny Q's aftermarket parts. It's even got writing in Chinese on it and stuff like that. You obviously bought it with the cheapest cost in mind. So I do my due diligence, and here's that. Ms. Jones, Mr. Jones, look, I can put this part on for you. The labor rate is more because we're not supplying the part. So there'll be a little bit more labor that would be normally charged. Understand this, a shop, we were talking about how a dealership depends on the service department to make the money for the dealership. That's because there's not much profit margin in labor. I mean, if you're paying a technician $30 an hour and he's getting 1.5 hours to do that job, 30 times 1.5, and then the labor I charged you to do the work, there's not much profit there, but there sure is profit in parts. And so when I allow you to bring your own part, I'm basically a parts changer at that point. Will we do it? Can we do it? Yes. But usually with the stipulation, the first stipulation is there's more labor that's going to be charged. So we can try to have some profit and stay profitable because we're a business, just like McDonald's. McDonald's, I dare any of you watching this video to walk into McDonald's with a hamburger and ask them to cook it up for you and use your hamburger instead of theirs. For some reason, it ain't gonna go over too well. I guarantee you it's not gonna happen. That's anywhere that you would take your own stuff in. But for some reason, the repair shops, people in their mind think that that's a viable thing that you can do. You know, it's just a strange thing. I've never really gotten my mind worked around it. And it's kind of good that I haven't, and I do appreciate working at shops where they don't allow that for this reason. Mr. Jones, yes, I'll take your alternator, but here's the thing. There's gonna be more labor charged for the job, and if I put that alternator on and I go to start that car and that alternator is junk right out of the box, or it lasts a day, it lasts a week, it lasts 5-6 months, and it fails, there is no warranty on parts or labor. Here's the oddest thing. They agree to it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. That was easy, you know. So yeah, absolutely. Well, give it to me. Give it to me. I'll take it out there to him. We'll put it on there. Real world happening. This sort of stuff happened before. Now, I wouldn't be saying this for any reason. Like I said, I'm trying to help you and help the shop, and I'm trying to help everybody involved. You put that part on Mr. Jones's car, and you come back to him or call him and say, Mr. Jones, that part's bad. It's just not charging at all. Okay, well, just take it off. I'll take it back to the shop, or I'll send it back to where I got it from, and I'll get a replacement and send it back to you. Well, hold on. Best case scenario there is you got it from AutoZone or O'Reilly's, because I'm sure it's only a few miles away. Yeah, I'll take it off, put it back in the box. You'll get me another one. But who's paying to take it back off? That would be a conversation I'd have before I even okayed this operation. Would be, you do realize that if this thing's bad, you're going to pay me the labor to get it back off for you. Because R&R of this job, that labor time guide said 1.5 hours. Well, that was to take off one and put one on. So now if I'm going to take off another one and put another one on, you're paying another 1.5 hours at the rate that I got you set at. Not too many people happy about that. However, as I noted, when they first dropped off the car, Mr. Jones was adamant that he was okay with that. He totally understood that that was going to be the case. Well, now he's not too understanding. As a matter of fact, he doesn't feel, and this has happened, he doesn't feel he had to pay anything because it didn't fix the car. I am not kidding you. That has actually happened to me a few times over the course of 26 years. Because the part that they dropped off did not fix the car, and now I've got to take off. They don't feel that they should have to pay the labor because it didn't fix it. It's mind-blowing. And like I said, that's best case scenario if it's AutoZone or O'Reilly's has the part. Let's say that they got it off of Amazon. Well, now they have to order another Amazon part. Even if you're on Amazon Prime, that's next day, more than likely, in best case. So what is the car in my bay going to do? How's that hurting bay efficiency? If I'm only making the labor on that part and I'm now going to have to take it off, it's hurting my bottom line, the numbers of the shop. It's also taking up the tech time. He could have been working on Miss Smith's car that had a valve cover gasket leak. We could have had that in there doing that job, which we're getting paid full tilt on. So Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work to try to bring your own parts. Now, kind of one other facet is, let's say everything went well. The car worked. You got it out of the shop 2 weeks later. Guess what? And again, this is a real world example. They call up, say, hey, that alternator you put on my car is no longer working. It should be under warranty. No, Mr. Jones, remember I told you there was no warranty. That's bull. I'm going to get on the internet and I'm going to type me up the worst review. And it's just a nightmare. And so you don't want the fireworks on the front counter. You don't want an upset customer. You don't want to hurt your bottom line, your bay efficiency. The best thing is, hey, we're a business. We need to proceed in a business-like fashion. It's actually doing you a disservice if I can't put a part on a car that I can't stand behind that warranty. And then of course you get, well, the tech did something wrong when he put it on, and it can go any number of directions, and no shop likes to have that happen. So 2 quick stories. The customer came in one day and they had bought their own bulbs. And up to that point in time, we were allowing customers to bring in wipers, headlight bulbs, taillight bulbs, things like that. We weren't trying to be dictatorish in it. So she had went to AutoZone, and of course, oddly enough, when I first started out, I worked at AutoZone for a little bit. So I know the folks working there are just basically going off with the screens answering. And I know just in my own industry, having worked this job for so long, the headlight on a Jeep Cherokee can either be a regular headlight, a halogen, or it can be a HID headlight. Saturday morning, my lead tech, who happens to be one of the owners, he ends up getting this job. The lady has brought her own headlight bulb in for the right side. She'd like us to put it in. Yes, ma'am. We have to charge you labor. Oh, no problem. My tech gets the bumper off on this particular model, gets the headlight out, opens and you can't really tell sometimes if it's halogen or HID. You just don't know, especially if it's burnt out. He goes to take the bulb out and compares to what the lady has. Wrong bulb. It's the HID bulb. This thing's expensive, about $140 a piece. So I walk back in. Hey, we'll call her Miss Jones. Hey, wrong bulb. Yeah, that's the wrong bulb. I have these bulbs. We stock most of these bulbs. It's $140 a piece. You want me to get one? Oh, I do. Most certainly do not want you to. So I walked out there to tell the tech, and she said, man, just put her old bulb back in. Well, she's going to pay me labor. And I said, well, she's saying she doesn't want to do that because the bulb isn't fixed. Thankfully, it was the owner because he came in after she left. They didn't charge her because, again, for that amount, I mean, you just need to have a policy of no customer supplied parts. And sure enough, the owner said, that's it, not even bulbs no more. That's it, no more customer supplied parts. Because again, by efficiency, you're not going to pay the tech because you didn't get paid. Theoretically, if he was on flag hours, he would have legitimately got paid for that. So you would have lost that money. And then the second example, same tech came in, and in a moment of weakness, when asked, the tech is one of the owners, when asked if if we're going to allow a door handle, an outside door handle be put on this Nissan Leaf, all electric car. I looked at it prior. It had wire guts hanging out of the door handle. It wasn't like your typical door handle. When asked, as a goodwill thing, should we put it on at no, basically labor, but just allow them to supply their own part? They'd asked me again when they showed up. They asked me again, and I wasn't going to do it. Stuck to my guns. And then, as a goodwill gesture, I asked the tech. The tech said, "Oh yeah, okay, this time." We put it on. She came to pick the car up. There were some other issues with the car that was going on. She goes out in the parking lot. There's a red light on the dash. She comes back in. That light wasn't on when I dropped the car off. Guess why the light's on? That door handle. Asked her where she got it. Off Amazon. And my tech pitched a fit. So it can really bite you. And it's not that we don't want to help, but we know the problems with these kinds of things that can come about. We get it. You're trying to save money. Who isn't? I mean, I'm trying to save money on insurance right now, health insurance. Who isn't looking for a deal? Who isn't looking for a coupon? Who isn't? I mean, we don't fault anyone for that. I get it. I can guarantee you when I go places, I'm looking for someone to honor my military discount. If I have AAA, or whatever the case is. No harm, no foul. That's perfectly fine. Supplying your own parts, it just ain't gonna work. Now, going back to when we may end up sourcing the part online. Let's say that the part has been discontinued and that particular part is not offered in the aftermarket. There's no availability. So if we're gonna fix your car, yes, we're gonna source that part possibly from Amazon. but we're going to be wise in that choice. Even then, we know which ones to stay away from. We're able to cross the parts. There's several other parts availability online that's better than some of the others. One of them is called Rock Auto. You might have heard of it. There's other ones, carparts.com, all kinds of them out there. There's one called A1 Auto Parts. That's one. So there's lots of good places out there. I myself, when I was faced with having to repair some parts on my own cars, when I saw what my cost was, and I would usually have to pay 10% over cost. Even when I went to Rock Auto, it was less. And of course, you got to deal with shipping, and in case there's a warranty issue, I would face that same problem. I'd have to wait, send it back. It was somewhat cheaper. But that's me doing the work. There's no bay efficiency issues to worry about. There's no profit margin to worry about. My daughter's car needed a fuel pressure regulator. I should have charged her, but so we will sometimes use Amazon parts. We will even use salvage yard parts. Like I was talking about the ABS modules. They discontinue those things so fast these days that the only viable source to get one is from the salvage yard. And so, we'll put it on there. We'll warranty it for the full warranty. So, and that's the benefit with the Amazon part that we put on there. We'll be able to warranty it for full 3-year, 36,000 miles. And what a deal that is, because what are the chances that part actually lasts 3 years, 36,000? It's just one of those things. So as long as we can source it from there and put it on, we will. Now, the question might beg, hey, I watched this guy on YouTube that says that you guys can source parts from Amazon. Can you go ahead and source it from Amazon? I'll pay the full price on it, but with the 336 warranty and all that stuff, will you do that? They won't typically do that if your part is still available from the vendors that they typically use. So if I can get an AC Delco starter for your car, I will. If it's no longer available and there's not a viable aftermarket one that I've got good history with, I've been able to depend on, they last well past the warranty, I'll get that one. But in lieu of that, if I have to go online, yes, I will. But that's the shop's call to make, basically. And 9 times out of 10, matter of fact, probably 10 out of 10, they're not going to tell you they did that. They'll typically tell you, that part's special order. It's going to take a couple days to get here. Yeah, because we're not Prime members. I told you I was going to tell you some behind the scenes stuff, okay? There are times you have to deal or basically order a part from the dealer, and it is only available from the dealer. You don't have Amazon, you don't have Rock Auto, no one else has it. eBay sometimes has it. But the dealer, it's only through the dealer. It's on back order, whatever. You'll actually sometimes, because once you place that order, if it's a special order part, in other words, the dealer doesn't usually stock it on their shelf, they don't want you to say, okay, go ahead and order it, and then you bail. Now they have this part that they can't send back. They've got it on their shelf collecting dust. That's overhead for them. They're not going to do that. So they'll tell us, there's no returns on special order parts. Well, what that means is at that point, I don't so much have to charge you the labor for the part at that point. We can handle that when the part comes in, you bring it back to get the job actually done. But I do need to charge you for the part, because let's say 20 minutes after you leave my shop, you told me to order the part. I did, I paid for it, and you get into a rear end collision, totals your car out. You're not coming back to get that part from me. So that shop has to protect itself in that way. So that may happen. So just kind of be wary of that. So you get the call, hey, Mr. Jones, you need an alternator for your Civic. And I tell you the parts and labor price. Why is it? Oh my gosh, why is it so expensive? You basically try to educate and say, well, do I have time to go through everything I went through on this video? No, I don't. That's why we're having this series. I want you to know, I want you to be armed and equipped when you walk in there to better understand what's happening. But at that point, you're probably going to get the spiel, well, you should know that this part, labor, comes with a full 3-year, 36,000 mile parts and labor warranty nationwide. It's put on by ASE certified technicians so that you can count on the job being done right the first time. Don't forget that if that part fails, you got towing at no cost. And did you enjoy the free coffee and Wi-Fi while you were here? You're basically letting them know, like with any sales business, you're building value in what you sold them. Now, contrast that to the hole in the wall about a mile down the road. Well, now, it is what it is. About a 6-month warranty, part only. It may not last out the parking lot. If it don't, you'll pay labor. And that's cold coffee over there. It's cold. So there's a difference. So remember, it's just not the parts and labor itself, it's the whole entire service experience. And so you're paying for all of that when you're actually thinking, well, I'm overpaying for labor, I'm overpaying for the part. It's the entire thing. And a good shop is gonna make it worth your while, and it's really gonna take care of you, shuttle you home, maybe give you a loaner car if they're available. All of that plays into the overall service cost. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna talk to you about a company called Repair Pal. Now, I'm not affiliated with Repair Pal. I don't sell Repair Pal. I'm not affiliated with MaxCare, CarMax, none of this stuff. So my goal in telling you about Repair Pal is to educate you that there is a tool online it's a good tool, but for the reasons I noted earlier, you do have to be careful with, it's not law, I guess I could say. For the example that I gave earlier, so Repair Pal is basically, it'll ask you to type in your zip code, it'll ask you your make and model and all that good stuff, and then you'll type in the type of repair you want. And of course, for our example, we're going to be dealing with the alternator for the Civic. It'll actually spit out a range, low side to high side. Can you depend on that? Is that, like I said, is that law? No, it's not. And you got to be careful as well, because remember our example about the some work on some cars that require subframe or partial engine removal to get the part out or changed. The labor time guide is what Repair Pal is going to look at. And so if they see 15 hours of labor in there, the human element, the subjective element that I talked about earlier, where the technician, I go to the tech and say, man, can you believe this job calls for 15 hours? Is that true? And the tech says, well, no, I've done them before. 5 hours is fair. To do. Wow, okay, man, that's good news for the customer. The tech gets taken care of. The customer doesn't have to pay as much as they normally would. The dealership, as I noted earlier, they're going to charge that whole 15 hours, typically. They typically will. I mean, they've got it to charge, and they will, especially if it's a warranty. Now, if it's a warranty, the labor rates work a little bit different. I'm sorry, not so much at the aftermarket shop or the independent as it does at the dealership. But if it's under warranty, then you're not going to be paying that anyway. So their labor structure and everything, how that works, is different. But suffice it to say, just for the education side of it, let's say the alternator on your 2024 alternator went out. It's a brand new car, it's still under the bumper to bumper 336. It's going to get changed under warranty. But it's funny the way that they do technicians, and that's why technicians hate getting warranty work. They'd rather have CP, customer pay, because let's say that alternator calls for 1.5 hours to pull it and change it, but then because it's warranty, there's a different time guide for warranty. So you have customer pay and you have warranty repair. And the warranty repair may only be like 0.6, 0.8. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's why there's such a disdain for a technician. In other words, their attitude is really poor. And that's why the repair shops or the dealer shops, they'll fight tooth and bone to keep from calling it a warranty issue. And that hurts you. So there needs to be some changes in that industry. They need to either, if it takes 1.5 customer pay, it should take 1.5 warranty. That's just as simple as that. But I can't change that, you can't change that. And for you, with it being under warranty, it's not really gonna matter. Just the work's getting done. You don't care how it gets done. I get that. Now in the aftermarket or the independent shops, there is such a thing as warranty rate. However, in the independent shops, we don't typically force the technician to take a warranty rate. There are some shops that do. Typically though, you're not gonna have, the shops I've worked at have never basically penalized the tech for a part being whatever. So that doesn't typically happen. But Repair Pal, like I said, its goal is to give you high and low side. It takes into consideration as much as it possibly can. Now think about this. Now the high and low side, there's gonna be a gap in between low and high, because they're not dictating what brand of part to use. They're not dictating what kind of warranty comes with that part. So all that is, that's dynamic. I mean, that can change from part and so forth, where you get it from and things like that. So I want to just assert that this should only be used as a guide. It's not something that you can call the shop up and beat them over the head with it and say, Repair Pal told me this, But again, they'll work with the CarMax, the MaxCare warranty. And on this site as well, let's say that you just want to go this route. You just want it repaired for as little as possible. You don't really care. It'll actually give you areas with affiliate shops located nearby. Now, many shops are affiliated with it. I would say at best loosely, because like the shops I worked at one that actually had it. I think I mentioned that. But the other shops didn't want to, and when we had it, we didn't really stick to it 100% either, because it's hard to let a third-party entity dictate to you what your service offering or experience is for your customers. Okay, and that's what the range is. Say the shop down the road, if you take your car to that shop down the road and they don't have shuttle, they don't have loaners, they don't have as good a warranty as you, all the amenities, all the service side of it, right? They got some, like I said, some gruff guy sitting there, just waiting for it to retire. That's unfair to take that estimate and go to that shop and go to that shop. It's so most shops don't like to be told how to run their business. That's what it comes down to. So I just give this to you as a loose kind of guide so that you can take it, and that's some more ammunition to put in your belt to kind of, I mean, if you walk in there and the low side is 1,500, high side's 2,000, and they're wanting 3,000, something ain't right. So it kind of should kind of pique your interest there a little bit. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to run through just real quickly just where to go to that site and kind of give a little education as we go through the process, and to just see if I can't kind of help you out a little bit navigating that site.
All right, so if you're going to use RepairPal, then of course I'll take you real quick through it. I'm not really going to get into the whole thing. RepairPal is an affiliate of CarMax, and so as a result of that, they do take the MaxCare warranty if you have that extended warranty. If you missed that video on extended warranties, here's that link. But going into it, you understand what an affiliate of a shop like that means, of what they're allowed to do. And by and large, when you go there, remember we were talking about in that extended warranty video, their ability to use used parts, salvage parts, salt encrusted parts from Michigan, the time that it takes to get the parts there. They can use all those parts as long as it's part of your warranty contract. They can also, the shop has agreed, being an affiliate, to accept their labor rate and all this other stuff. Basically, be careful using this. I mean, the other benefit, if you do have a MaxCare warranty, when you use a CarMax RepairPal linked facility, and you can come up here and you can find the repair location, get an estimate and all this stuff, okay? But if you use them, if you have a deductible, they say that if you use that shop in a reward, they'll take off $50 of the deductible. And so that really benefits the shop that they're affiliated with, to get you to come in there rather than go anywhere else. Who doesn't want to save $50, So just understand, when you go to a shop like that, yes, you may walk out of there paying just your deductible, or whatever that is, less the 50, but you might have conceded getting a decent quality part. Now, like we talked about in that extended warranty video, the warranty that they typically will offer with that repair is 12 months, 12,000 miles. They can afford to put on a part that may be less than stellar because they're only on the hook to replace it for 12 months or 12,000 miles, whichever comes first. Now, the first thing that will come up on here says, enjoy this pricing for 30 days. So this quote would only be good for 30 days. I picked Houston 77058. We replaced it. I've already done this, but an alternator replacement on a 16 Honda Civic. So we click on that. Now here it shoots over to, it says an alternator replacement. A low side of it should be 1132, high side 1351. Now, if you go down here, this estimate does not account for taxes. So there's no tax on parts, and if parts makes up 73% of this, that's a number that you're going to pay attention to. Any diagnostics that you might be charged, because see, just by stating this here, they fully are aware that if you show up to some place, so they may go ahead and charge diagnostics. So you may be in for a diagnostics cost and other fees. Again, if you go watch the extended warranty video I did, you find out what those other fees are, shop supplies, why they charge them, and stuff like that. On the surface, 1132 to 1351, if you currently have your car to shop and they're wanting to charge you $1,200, let's just go $1,250. When you see this number and see how they put the big font, they want you to see these big fonts, and this is a very small font down here. But let's say, hey, no, you know what? I've found a place that's going to do it. You know, they will honor this warranty of between 1132 and 1351. I'm gonna go ahead and take it on over there because you're wanting to charge me $1,250, and I won't want to pay that much. Well, again, you got to keep this in mind right here. You also, if it needs an alternator for this example, chances are it died on you while it was driving. You got it towed in here in the first place. There probably was a tow cost. Now, if you want to use a different shop, you're going to have to tow it from this shop over to that shop. So you got to kind of, you know, not miss the forest for the trees kind of scenario. On this estimate right here, this is supposed to be the fair pricing. Now, one of the things that RepairPal says that they do is before they become an affiliate with any shop, they go through a rigorous check of the ASE certifications. There's all kinds of things they check. They must offer a minimum of 12-month, 12,000 mile warranty and things like that. Over all these years, I've had the chance to be an affiliate RepairPal shop. And although I didn't personally sign up for the service, I didn't actually see anyone coming around and asking for ASE certifications either. That's not to say at some point they weren't asked for and were provided, but I do know at the shops I worked at, I know for a fact that although some of those techs had been prior ASE certified, their certifications had ran out and they had not had them renewed. And so because ASE certification, you know, like for mine being a service advisor, it's only good for 5 years. And so at the end of 5 years, you have to go in and retake it just to keep you on top of your stuff, you know. For technicians, they'll have air conditioning ASE certifications, electrical ASE certifications. So you may have a tech in the back that is ASE certified on air conditioning, but he's not ASE certified on some other aspect of car repair. I don't know how truly thorough the RepairPal scenario is with the shops. I imagine they're just going off what they're told, you know, and maybe with some, I honestly don't know, but like I said, what I do know is when we were RepairPal certified, there were technicians that worked on vehicles in the shop that did not have current, up-to-date, or some of them didn't have any ASE certifications at all. So I'm not knocking RepairPal. I think it is a helpful tool to kind of get a good gauge of what something might cost in your zip. Let's go head gasket replacement real quick. I just want to see, and we're just going to pick a, they say here this is the most common model of that year, so we'll pick it. Why not? $3,200 to $4,500 is typical. And in this case, yes, the large part of this repair is going to be mostly labor. The parts, you're talking about a gasket set, you know, a head gasket kit with some head bolts and, you know, maybe some machine shop stuff. Labor, technically at a shop, is about what the technician does to it. It doesn't so much cover sublets, which a machine shop would be a sublet. Not many, if at all, repair shops have a machine shop in their back area back there. So they almost always send it out to a machine shop nearby, and that's where the head would be resurfaced and things like that. So I don't know if they're trying to associate sublet here with the labor, or if they would, you know, they're clearly not doing it in parts because it would be a bigger number here. This is just a guide to help you kind of use it, help you understand. It's not flawless, it's not fail-proof, because like I'm mentioning in this video here, the labor time guides can be off, sometimes significantly so. One of the things I will tell you, shops push back on RepairPal because in their mindset, they're not so much just selling the alternator and the labor it took to put it on. In their minds, they're selling an entire service. All right, so that comes down to, do they offer a shuttle? As far as what does their shop look like? I mean, is it a nice shop? Is it a comfortable waiting room? Do they have all the amenities, coffee, soft drinks, things like that? Basically apples to oranges. If you walk into a shop that might be offering it for this price, and they got a black and white TV with rabbit ears with foil on the end, it stinks in there, it smells like grease and everything else, and some 300 pound guy who's 5'4" is sitting behind the counter, you know, rough and gruff, "Can I help you?" You know, so it's not apples to apples, so be careful with this kind of stuff here. And another thing, RepairPal, a lot of shops do not like some third party dictating to them what they charge for certain repairs, and so that's just it. They don't want someone telling them what to do.
So there you go, another episode down at Auto Repair Shop Truths. Of course, I'm your host, Kurt Bennett. Look, share, like, subscribe, all that stuff. It's so nice when you do that because in the end, it helps me, yes. But guess what? It helps whoever you care about. So if you have a daughter, a son, husband, wife, someone that you feel, elder parents, friends, things like that, co-workers, get this out to them. It is really done from the standpoint, I truly, truly want to help you. I really want to show you what's going on behind the scenes at these shops. I appreciate it. I'll see you next time.